executive director of one of our large grant recipients from the 2021-2022 Rotary year. Nathan was born in Washington, D.C. and grew up in Rockville, Maryland. After graduating from Bates College in Maine, he taught social studies and Spanish in DC area public schools for 11 years and earned a master's in education and policy from Howard University. Nathan has lived and been civically active in Ward 8 since 2009, chairing the committee to Restore Shepherd Parkway and managing the Ward 8 Farmers Market. In 2018, he spearheaded the formation of Ward 8 Woods Conservancy. He also worked as a local urban gardener and professional tour guide. Without further ado, Nathan Harrington.
Thank you and welcome, Nathan.
Thank you. All right, good afternoon, everybody. And thank you so much for having me. Thanks to Marilyn for inviting me. As she mentioned, DC Rotary Foundation was one of our largest funders last year. And I know a lot of you have donated money that has gone into that pool. So thank you so much for that. We really are grateful. We're a small organization, so a little bit goes a long way for us. Do you have any Ward 8 residents? So I ended up there mainly because I wanted to buy a house, and I wanted to buy a house that I could afford on a teacher's salary. I wanted to be in a metro. I wanted to have a yard, and found that was where I could afford to have those things. And there was some discouragement. Some people were concerned. They told me that it wouldn't be safe. But I decided to sort of brush those things aside and take a chance. It's worked out very well for me. Was always looking for ways to contribute, help with some of the unmet needs that I saw there. And it took a while, but I found my niche with Ward 8 Woods. And what we do is really focus attention on forgotten spaces, nooks and crannies of land that are sort of interlaced with our neighborhoods. A lot of it is federal parkland. Some of it is city owned. Some of it is privately owned. But in all cases, it's just been sort of left there. And we know in urban areas, if you have a property that no one is paying attention to or maintaining, it's not going to go well. All right. So here's the question that I often start with. There's a lot I alluded to earlier, there's a lot going on in Ward 8. Right? It's an area of concentrated poverty. So people would say the most important thing is to stop the violence, or the most important thing is housing, the most important thing is education, mental health, substance abuse treatment. Who cares about the woods? Why is that worthy of our attention? Well, we have to remember that people are not separate from the environment. All of the places where we live, work, and play, that is the environment, the air that we breathe, the sights and smells and noises that we encounter daily, that's all part of the environment. Polluted air and water make people sick. Clean air and water make people healthy. So we don't see, we reject the idea that those other priorities are in competition with environmental restoration. We believe environmental restoration is an integral piece of fixing all the things that ail a place like Ward 8, and that's why our motto is healing the land, empowering people. So this is a picture taken in the woods along Suitland Parkway, healthy eastern hardwood forest. You can imagine if a home that backed onto this or had this across the street would be a valuable, desirable property. You'd rather have a public parkland like that forest next to where you live than, say, other people's homes. And that's true in places like DuPont Circle. Some of the most desirable properties are the ones that border onto public parkland. A couple hundred yards away, a couple hundred yards away, we've got this. You can see there's an apartment building, a fence, and for many, many years, residents have thrown their things, household trash, furniture, appliances, diapers, you name it, over the fence into the woods. So this is what the public parkland looks like. So in order for it to get like this, obviously you have to have residents who are doing it, but you also have to have a landlord or apartment managers who don't care. The city, this is district government land, the city has to be not paying attention and not doing anything about it. So this kind of environmental disaster is really indicative of neglect and divestment of the communities in Ward 8. And that fits into a larger pattern that's known as environmental racism, where pollution is most often found like this in low-income Black and Brown communities. And it is the more affluent areas where the environment is kept clean. So we know that there's a lot of benefit from living next to a forest. Forests clean the air by absorbing polluting gases, including those that cause climate change. So planting trees, maintaining forests is one of our best tools to fight climate change. They are key to clean water. They clean the stormwater, they flow, they absorb contaminants, they slow the water down, they prevent erosion, they mitigate flooding. In DC summers, forests and trees are really important in breaking up heat islands and providing shade. Interestingly enough, in the winter, they also have a warming effect. They slow down wind speed, so they moderate weather year round. And in an urban area, parklands like these are also important for shielding residential areas from unsightly views and noises from highways, railroad tracks, and industrial areas. So you can have all of those benefits if you live next to a forest. You can imagine the harm that would come from living next to a dump. Now, unfortunately, some of our forests in DC are also dumps. And so we're trying to eliminate the harm that comes from being next to a dump that harms the air and the water quality. It's an eyesore. It harms the wildlife, so that residents can enjoy the benefits that I just mentioned. So Ward 8 Woods Conservancy was started in 2018. Initially, it was a project of Anacostia Coordinating Council, which is a longstanding community organization in east of the river. And after about a year, we got our own 501c3, and the following year, 2020, began operating independently as our own nonprofit. Our goal is environmental justice. We want the parks in Ward 8 to be as well maintained and accessible as those in the western part of DC in Ward 3. So in order to do that, we focused on trying to dramatically reduce the impact of trash and invasive species. And we do that while providing income and meaningful work for residents who face barriers to employment. So our Park Steward program currently has about 5 people working, not about 5, it has 5 people working 20 hours a week. They are actually in the woods as we speak, bagging up trash, not just bottles and cans, but also tires, car parts, furniture, old TVs. It's amazing the things that people throw away. I found a trombone last week that someone had thrown away. Not operable, but still kind of cool. I put it in my garden as a decoration. And then more long term, we want to empower residents to live active lives and connect with the natural world. Obviously, people would not throw their trash in the woods if they saw the woods as a special place, or even a magical place, a place where they could rejuvenate their bodies and their spirits. So to that end, and we need to make these woods welcoming and accessible through construction of hiking trails, educational and recreational programs for people of all ages. So this is a picture of our Park Steward crew at Oxen Run. You can see, again, a very nice forest behind here. This particular area has a lot of white oaks and chestnut oaks, but you can also see all of the junk that was gathered up just in an hour or two. Now, something I've observed in my travels is that the nicest parks, the nicest public lands are those that have groups of local people who are concerned about them and who advocate, and to, in many cases, step in and do what the local governments that are supposed to be in charge of these parks cannot or will not do. New York City, I think, is a really good example. Many of the park, Central Park, Prospect Park in Brooklyn, have really strong conservancies made up of local people who live and have businesses nearby, and they raise a lot of money, and they do a lot of the work to make those parks the tourist attractions, frankly, that they are. In Northwest Philadelphia, Friends of the Wissahickon. Wissahickon is a park actually quite similar to Rock Creek. They do a beautiful job there. And locally, Rock Creek Conservancy. So Ward 8 Woods is modeled in some ways after those organizations.
Thank you. Thank you, Nathan. That was a great presentation. And thanks for all the work that you're doing for Ward 8. One of the things I might have missed, but you have 5 folks working. Like in the employment, how does that work? Do you have people waiting in line, but you can't pay them? Or could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, we have people almost every day that we're out there working. People see us working and they come and ask about jobs, same as they did before we had the jobs program. Before, the answer was sorry, no jobs. Now the answer is here's the link to the application. You can apply and we'll call you if and when there's an opening. But people tend to, it's a good arrangement for a lot of people, and they tend to stay. So we don't have a lot of openings. If we had more money, we could hire more people. The base rate is $19 an hour, and it goes up from there.
Thank you so much. That's a very good program that you are doing. As much as you have indicated that it's very difficult to separate people from the environment. My question to you is, as much as you are doing it today, you are collecting the trash that had been deposited by people a long time ago. What is your long-term program in order to stop that from happening? I mean, in line with teaching them young, are you involving the parents such that the future generation has to understand the dangers of throwing the trash out?
Yeah. So I think for a lot of us who were just raised not to litter, it's hard to understand why other people do it and don't think about it. Some of the research on littering shows one of the reasons why people do it is because they don't feel a sense of ownership or control over the place where they are. And so our theme for our anti-littering and anti-dumping campaign is clean it, claim it. So we're trying to speak directly to the idea of when you take responsibility for maintaining a space, you are actually exerting control and ownership over it. So it's something that you can kind of decide whether you're going to claim your land or not. So we actually recently we commissioned a bunch of artwork. We put up so far 50 signs. If you go on our website or social media, you can see pictures of them. We made them very attractive, and they have slogans like put trash in its place, don't trash DC, trash doesn't go on the ground, in reference to the go-go music. So, you know, we don't know if they're going to make a difference, but we're pretty sure they're not going to hurt. And it's not that expensive. And it's fun to just kind of try a bunch of different things and see what sticks. We're also working a lot with the managers. I showed up an apartment building. That place, actually, we got the management to give us a contract to clean it up. So we were sort of wanting to clean it up anyway, but since it's coming from their property, they should take responsibility for cleaning it up. And in this case, they actually did. Most of the time, the management doesn't care that much. They don't want to spend the money. So that's when we have to go to our contacts in DC government to do enforcement. And then if they start getting a fine for, recently, another complex was fined $1,000 per day until they remediated. It's like, we offered to do it for you for $3,000. Now you've collected $7,000 in fines over the last week, and now you have to pay another contractor probably more than $3,000 to clean it out. So we're trying to make it so create a situation where pollution doesn't pay.
Nathan, thank you very much, and very impressive, important work that you're doing. Commend you for having taken the initiative. You founded it. Ward 8 was where I grew up until I was about 8 years old. And before my parents bought a farm out in Prince George's County, and I became a farm boy. But it's fantastic to see that. And I know you have a great sense of working with people in the community. Anyway, we want to recognize you today as our speaker. We have a tradition of planting a tree in the honor of each speaker. It's something we do in partnership with the National Park Service. Thanks again, Nathan.